What's going on, everyone? BouseFeenux here, and holy crap, man, we got a lot to talk about today, but first, welcome to another Warriors Den dev stream recap. Kind of weird to say that on a Friday, but here we are. Anyway, let's jump in because we have got a lot to cover. First up, in addition to the Warriors Den, the dev team is going to be releasing a weekly article talking about the goings-on in the game from week to week. It's kind of like a short dev stream in text form. They've already got the first one up, so I'll link that one in the description below for you guys to check out. Aside from that, though, the entire stream was pretty much spent talking about a massive patch coming to all platforms soon. This is a good thing, by the way. We didn't really get any kind of ETAs or time frame on any of this stuff, which is admittedly a little frustrating, but they stated that they didn't want to make any date promises because if they were to delay it, they more or less don't want another firestorm, which, given the recent events, is pretty understandable. Still, it would have been good to know if we're looking at weeks or months before we see this stuff. Anyway, I'll stop being a tease and jump into it because this is some sexy stuff. So firstly, they want to take a look at a few minor issues that'll make quite the difference for some people. To start, they're improving the controller inputs for the Nobushi's hidden stance. I haven't touched the Nobushi yet, but from what I hear, it's kind of a pain to use that move, so they're aiming to make it a lot easier. Along with that, they're planning to fix the assassin's stamina throw bug. Currently, if you guard break, then throw an assassin character who's out of stamina, if they wiggle the block stand stick, they won't fall down. This is pretty frustrating for sure, so it's good that they're looking into it. Lastly, on minor fixes though, they're taking a look at the regeneration ability that Warlord and a bunch of other characters have. I covered this one in detail in a previous video, so if you want to learn a little bit more about it, click the card in the top right-hand corner of the video. Moving on though, the next thing they dug into were gear stats. They pretty much flat out admitted that gear gives way too much of an advantage. The main culprit, and thank God they acknowledged this, was that revenge was the main problem. As such, they're going to be massively toning down the values around revenge gain, damage, and defense. Additionally, it was noted that there are a couple of stats not working as intended. For example, revenge gain on injury was building even on blocks, and debuff resistance made the guard break window off of a parry much shorter. They're looking to change these things. So real quick, in my opinion, these revenge changes sound great, but I am a little worried about ganking becoming more prevalent. Hopefully they don't move the slider too far in one direction, because in that situation, we'll just be trading one problem for another. We'll just have to see how it plays out, though. Lastly, on the tail end of all of that, they mentioned that they want to take a look at revenge gain in duels, which is something people have been wanting since pretty much forever. Also, sprint speed is getting nerfed. This is great. No more chasing after the last Orochi for 5 minutes as he just trolls and waits out the clock in an elim where he's the last person left alive, so thank God for that. Revenge and gear stats aside, the next thing they touched on briefly was matchmaking. Currently, as we all know, matchmaking begins before you pick a hero. This is a problem because maybe you're leveling a new character, and if your account total reputation is high, you'll be matched with other high-level players. You're not going to have the gear or the skill level with a new character to compete at that level, obviously, so leveling pretty much turns into a slog. I know this from experience because I've had to do it 4 separate times. It sucks until you get to Rep 3. To fix this problem, in the short term, they want to take a look at rebalancing gear stats overall, and in the long term, they mentioned they pretty much want to give matchmaking a whole rework with gear stats in mind. They didn't really elaborate on that one, so it's pretty much anyone's guess as to what they could do there. Moving on though, the next topic they touched on was really heavy. This is where they got into the nerfs and buffs for PK, Warlord, and Lawbringer. For PK, they want to change your zone attack, and it will now be treated as a light attack instead of a heavy. This is a huge change, especially since light attacks can't be cancelled. If that rule applies to the new PK zone attack, it could mean no more PK revenge zone spam, and if they do use the move, they'll have to follow through with it, and the second attack for that is easily parried. In addition to that, her side dash heavy jab attack is being nerfed damage-wise, and if it's blocked, she'll have her recovery time increased. Honestly, I don't really feel like that attack was too much of a problem, but from the data they gathered, they found that she was dealing too much damage this way. At a higher level, people almost never use this attack because it's so unsafe, so, I mean, it's a nerf, but I'm not sure it's the right nerf. She's still got the light spam, which is still the main problem, but one thing at a time, baby steps, guys. The last thing they're doing for PK, though, is actually buffing her deflect. People freaked out about this because they heard PK and buff in the same sentence, but honestly, I think all assassins except maybe the Zerker need the deflect buffed. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but right now, it's unsafe to use, and it's a main part of being an assassin, so take that for what you will. Anyway, for the Warlord, most of the changes to him are coming in the form of a headbutt nerf. Thank God. Firstly, its startup time is going to be increased, making it easier to dodge, and if you do dodge it, the recovery time is going to be increased, making it a punishable move. This is the right nerf. Headbutt spam haunts me in my nightmares, and it's nice to know that they're actually looking at it. On top of this, no more headbutt just from initiating full block stance. Like his riposte move, he'll actually have to block a hit before he can retaliate with a headbutt. I feel like this is a lot more fair. Moving on to the star of the show, though, Lawbringer is basically being injected with massive amounts of steroids. His buff list is as long as his freaking polearm, so I'll just cover some of the high points. Firstly, Long Arm of the Law, that shovel move that everyone hates, is going to give you a free side heavy if you land it. From what I remember, I think you only got a free top light off of it, so this is a massive buff considering that side heavy starts a chain and obviously deals more damage than a top light. A lot of his other attacks are being increased in speed, and to top it all off, his zone attack after a parry is going to have hyper armor and increased damage. With that and some of the other changes they mentioned, LB is going to have a lot more options. When those buffs come out, I might just have to pick him up as my next character because he's going to be an absolute monster. To finish off the rebalance, though, they mentioned that Kensei, Zerker, and Raider are pretty much getting a buff or a few tweaks, but they didn't go into specifics yet. They did say, though, that they'll most likely be ready to talk about those changes by the next stream. The last thing they covered were some various and sundry other fixes coming to the game. This included an acknowledgement that defensive play is too rewarding currently and that parries are too strong. I have no idea how they're going to change the current defense meta we're in, but it'll definitely be interesting to see. As a side note here, I've been playing Neo a ton lately, and while that's a PvE game, there's still a blocking and stamina mechanic. In Neo, playing super defensively is massively punishable. You run out of stamina by blocking too many hits in a row, and if you do, you're in for a whole world of hurt. Now, For Honor doesn't need to be like that exactly, but there definitely should be a counterplay to excessive turtling. Another thing they're changing, and this is something I was overjoyed to hear, is that in elimination matches, buffs will spawn 20 seconds after the round starts, and grabbing them takes an extra second. This is fantastic news because anymore, people can just run straight for buffs. It's super annoying, but with that change and the change to sprint speed, things should play out a lot differently. To close the stream, they mentioned that they're still developing a system to punish rage quitters with no real details on what that looks like yet, and lastly, they mentioned that no Raider or Orochi changes will make it into this next patch. But this is crazy stuff, guys. Pretty much everything I talked about above is being worked into the next patch. This is a lot of stuff, and if all goes well, this will change the game in a pretty big way. There are still some issues that weren't addressed, but I think that given the time they had today, a ton of stuff was crammed in, and with the exception of a few things, I think they answered a lot of questions that the community at large had. This brings us back to the topic of the blackout, though. Given what we saw today, are you guys still planning on boycotting the game? I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about this in the comments below. But that's about everything for today, guys. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like down below. If you're new here, get subscribed so that you never miss a video, and until next time, I'm BouseFeenux. I'll see you at the next video, and as always, thank you so much for watching.